Hello, welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. About a week ago, I saw an article from Clutch Magazine. Someone posted it on Facebook. The article is about a Nigerian pop singer named Densia. She is selling skin lightening products, and in fact, apparently, she uses skin lightening products, because she went from having a dark complexion to having a milky white complexion. And seeing this article troubled me. And before seeing this article, I had seen other articles about the same topic, about Africans or people of color lightening their skin so that they can appear lighter or whiter. And I've heard stories about how this problem exists in Africa, in the Caribbean, and even here in the United States. And this problem is really a symptom of a larger problem. And here we are, all of these years after slavery, all of these years after Jim Crow, and all of these years after traditional colonialism. And still, we suffer from a lack of knowledge of self. We continue to suffer from self-hatred. And the reason why we suffer from these conditions is because even though we are free in some sense, our minds are not free. And the topic of this video is freeing the black mind. Many of us, have an idealistic vision of Africa. It's a source of inspiration. It's our motherland. And that's part of the reason why this article really troubled me. It troubled me to see news reports about Africans in Africa, in Senegal, in Nigeria, and other places, actually purchasing skin lightening products to lighten their skin so that they can get to look lighter and whiter. And when I heard these stories, I immediately thought of Malcolm X's speech where he talked about who taught you to hate yourself. When he talked about African Americans lightening their skin to look like the white man, ashamed of their features. And again, all of these problems go back to the fact that our minds are not free. Even after all these years of colonialism, after colonialism ended formally in these countries, still we are programmed to worship white people. And, this worship of white people has many manifestations. One manifestation is the most obvious. It's our place of worship. Many of us, many African Americans and just Africans around the world, when they go to church on Sunday, or when they go to their church on any other occasion, often they have a white image of God before them. They have a white Jesus to worship. Instead of being brought closer to God and closer to understanding, their minds have been basically colonized by European imagery and European ideals and values. And that is what has happened with, unfortunately, many Christian churches around the world. Instead of being places where people learn to worship God, they are learning to worship the white man. And this programming isn't confined really to, Christianity or anything like that. It is also a problem among Muslims. Many Muslims have been taught, they've traded the Western white man for the Arab white man. And although, they don't worship a particular image, they have bought into the idea that Arabs are superior, that they must be like an Arab in order to be accepted, that they must, speak and act like Arabs, emulate Arabs in order to be righteous. So the programming, crosses the different religious backgrounds. It affects all religious groups that are African. As I pointed out, I saw a news report in Senegal of Africans lightening their skin to look whiter or lighter. And that's a Muslim country, so this issue is not confined to Christians or anything like that. So beyond the religion, programming is perpetuated through the media. When we listen to music, when we turn on our televisions, we are bombarded with images of the white standard of beauty. We are told that you have to be light in order to be beautiful. We are told that you have to have long hair in order to be beautiful. You have to have European features in order to be beautiful. That's what we have been programmed to believe. And this programming has taught us to hate ourselves. And it has taught us to worship white people and everything that represents white people. So in that sense, our minds have been colonized worldwide. And in that article, there's a link to a World Health Organization report about skin lightening. And in that report, it says that 77% of Nigerian women have lightened their skin or used skin lightening products. They said that 25% in Mali have used skin lightening products. They said that 27% in Senegal have used skin lightening products. 35% in South Africa have used skin lightening products. And 59% in Togo have used skin lightening products. And then they say that in about 40% in Asian countries like China, Malaysia, and the Philippines have used skin lightening products. So this problem isn't even just confined to the African population. It goes beyond that to other people of color as well. Their minds have been colonized as well by these European standards of beauty. So what we need to do is free our minds. And the only way you can free your mind is to have knowledge of self, to know your history. And once you know your history, you realize that you have nothing to be ashamed of. You realize that you have much to be proud of. You realize that you are in fact beautiful. You realize that your standard of beauty is not shaped by other foreign standards of beauty. And for Black History Month, I'm going to talk about quite a few books that have inspired me to take on the journey towards mental liberation. And I'm going to go into depth in those during those videos about some of the books that inspired me. But that is the first step, because as long as we are mentally enslaved, our condition won't improve as a people. Now, many have attacked Black women because they display, some of them display the symbols of self-hatred. They attack women for wearing weaves and things like that. But we have to understand that many of the women would not do these things if the man wasn't programmed to worship white women. If the man didn't view white women as the standard of beauty, if the man viewed the natural African features as beautiful, then it would be less likely that African women would try to lighten their skin or buy weaves and things like that. So we must free the minds of the men and the women and the children. And again, the way you free the mind is with knowledge of self. And I want to just show you a couple of books that helped me along that journey towards understanding and knowledge of self. And before I do that, I just want to, quote Bob Marley. Bob Marley said, "None but ourselves can free our minds." This is something that only we can do. And before I show you some of these books, I just want to go into another point. When you look at a lot of the problems that Africans face, both on the continent and throughout the diaspora, you will see that a lot of those problems stem from that legacy of colonialism, Jim Crow, and slavery. Because we have continued to have the mindset of a slave. We've continued to have the mindset of a colonial subject. And that has prevented us from being free. That's why you have, so much conflict on the continent, because we are able to be manipulated. These differences that we have are highlighted and they're used to help further our own destruction as a people. And we also see that in our neighborhoods, in our communities in America. Of course, and I've talked about this over and over again, about the institutions that help breed the violence, about the poverty, about the unemployment, about the failing schools, about the actual physical conditions that help perpetuate the problem. Things like the influx of guns and drugs. All of those things fuel the violence. But also the violence is fueled by ignorance. It is also fueled by a lack of knowledge of self. So I'm going to show a couple of the books that I have read, that have inspired me and have led me on that journey to mental liberation. And the first book that I'm going to show is the autobiography of Malcolm X. I read that book, years ago when I was in college. But I saw a video about the life of Malcolm X. All my life, I was not, for the most part, exposed to Malcolm X's message. I was just given the traditional Black history lessons about Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King and other civil rights figures and other types of traditional Black history lessons. And when I was taught about Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks, of course we were given the childhood version of what they did and what their accomplishments were without an in-depth analysis of what they actually stood for and believed. But anyway, as a child, I wasn't taught about Malcolm X. I wasn't taught about him in high school. I wasn't given any of his speeches to read. I didn't listen to any of his speeches. But when I heard his speeches as a young college student, it inspired me to get involved in my community. It inspired me to become engaged in the struggle for social justice. It inspired me to believe in myself as an African man and as a Black man. It taught me to be proud of who I am. And it also led me on a journey to reading other books and getting involved with political organizations. Because Malcolm X, he taught us to be proud of who we are. He taught us about our history, about our accomplishments, and about where we need to go as a people. He taught us about self-reliance and independence, freeing ourselves from dependency. Because dependency is, an essential part of being a subject or being oppressed. If you're dependent on someone, that means you're subject to their whims and desires. You are, essentially their servant. So, that was one book that really inspired me to embark on this journey. Another book that I read was W.E.B. Du Bois, The World in Africa. That book helped lay a basic foundation about the accomplishments of African people, about our place in the world. And, after reading those books, I began to read books about the Black Panthers. One book in particular would be Bobby Seale's book, Seize the Time. And I went on to read Huey P. Newton's book, Revolutionary Suicide. So those books were mainly geared toward the political aspect. But all of these books, helped shape my understanding of who I am as a black man. And it gave me a sense of pride and purpose in life. And right now I'm in the process of reading this book by Chancellor Williams entitled The Destruction of Black Civilization. And, next month I'm going to probably do a whole video dedicated to that book where I focus on doing a review of the book and talking about how we went from being the founders of civilization to being colonial subjects, to being slaves, and to being second-class citizens. So we'll discuss that probably next month. But it's important that we have knowledge of self, because without it, we'll continue to suffer, and we will continue to be someone else's subject. We'll continue to be the peons of the world.